All right, good day, everyone, and thank you for viewing this Permissions Manager 22.1 release Q&A session. I'm Brian Lapointe. I'm the Vice President of Sales and pleased to be joined by my distinguished colleague, David Henshaw. He's the VP of Products, also our CTO for Fastman. Myself and David, we've been working in the OpenText ecosystem for many years and always open to sharing best practices about it. Say hello, David.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. So without further ado, let's get things started here, right? Hey, to start it off, it's common knowledge that Permissions Manager is our flagship product, and it's very popular. It's a very popular add-on, in the OpenText and Content Suite platform, extended ECM community. In fact, it's used by many of the most recognizable names in the Content Suite community too. As a consistent theme, we find our customers focused on using Content Suite platform as that single point of truth for all their unstructured content. They even tell me that managing access and permissions is the #1 incident type in maintaining any ECM platform, and that Permissions Manager reduces that administrative burden by 2, even 3x. Not only that, they're able to deliver more value and information integrity to the business users because the tools keep Content Suite healthy and relevant. So this is a nice thought to keep top of mind for today's Q&A. Also, I'd like to say Fastman continues to innovate Permissions Manager this year, 2022, with a very consistent quarterly release schedule. In this release, we focused in on improving several key modules of the Permissions Manager suite. This is including the permission search, replace user, along with effective permissions and permissions filtering. So a lot of nice new interesting capabilities have been added in this release. So let's just take a quick look here. Before we dive into some of the specific enhancements that we've done this time, let's first let's first talk about a few important modules within Permissions Manager. Of course, the permissions dashboard and our rollback capability are very popular. However, the permissions search module is a very useful solution and lets you search features without having to write SQL queries or to interrogate the database. This comes in very handy because there's no native mechanism available within Content Suite to do this. It essentially lets you generate a result that you can then make specific permission changes on and display them on the object. A few examples is find all content that is, let's say, publicly accessible, or content where the owner has edit permissions. Right? So I have a few examples right here. Find content where a user or group has been modified. David, would you like to comment a little bit about the permission search?
Yeah, Brian. So as you say, quite a robust and extensive tool, able to handle a variety of different combinations of search types. So search on exact permission matches, at least a particular a match. And then take those results and then remedy potentially variations to or situations where the security model does not match what you would expect. So, Brian, you touched on a classic example, for example, with public access, auditing of HR content or sensitive content, being able to find everything that shouldn't be public accessible and verify that. Simple and routine query from an audit perspective can be now answered through search with no need to write any SQL, web reports, or anything else, all out of the box.
I think that last point's the most important there. It's all out of the box, nothing custom. This is out of the box application that comes with Permissions Manager. So next up, we have the replace user module. This fancy piece of functionality allows a user to be removed from the default access and assign access lists. And then a different user can be substituted in their position. The functionality also allows the permissions set to be changed concurrently with the replacing of users. This can be either applied to an individual item or applied to sub-items concurrently. Dave, would you care to make a few comments or mention a few useful use cases?
Key one, Brian, replacement of ownership of content during staff changes. So potentially people changing roles or outgoing and splitting of job functions, where you really need to transfer from potentially a records management perspective, transfer the ownership not just from one individual to another individual, but potentially transfer content from one individual to multiple individuals based upon location and segmentation of your content. A group consolidation. So if you're going through a cleanup exercise of your records, your content suite groups, and you want to rationalize, the replace user allows you to do that by replacing multiple groups down to a single group. And of course, in recent releases, we've really also extended our role-based support. So the ability to do things with connected workspaces and extended ECM workspaces, and managing the roles that are on those workspaces through the replacement exercise if needed.
You know, many times I find when I'm talking with some of our clients, it's within these two modules where some of the biggest return on investment comes from with Permissions Manager, because when they need to use these tools, these modules for a specific job, it's usually sizable and important to them. And again, this is where that large ROI comes from, at least from what I can tell.
Yeah, agreed, Brian. Swiss Army knife.
Good comment. All right, David, thank you. I can see you were very busy this quarter too with the latest release, and again, a focus on the permission search, that replace user module, and again, effective permissions. Would you like to give your overall perspective on what we've accomplished?
Yeah, so a lot of focus in this release on usability improvements. So some functions that we've had for quite a while, but really surfacing a simplified experience. So working my way through those, we have the ability when we're doing a permission search, rather than displaying all of the permissions on the object that match to the search criteria. So if I have a search criteria that matches and then displaying every single ACL entry or access entry, we can now display the simplified version of just the entries that we're interested in based upon the search criteria. And you can toggle between those two. So there's really now the ability to see a simplified view or an enhanced view for the purposes of auditing versus making change. Effective permissions, similarly, we've always had that feature to be able to look at the permissions a user or a given user has based upon their group and role membership, so their effective permission based upon those. That's always been something present in our dashboard for the sub items when you're looking at a particular location. Again, we've surfaced that another level up so that you can see that information on all of the items in the permissions view, and again, toggle between the views as necessary to then go and execute change. And the replace user and group, which we touched on, has been extended to now allow you to do a perform of a replace on particular object types. So I no longer have to apply a change to the entire content. I can apply changes to particular item types, e.g. I only want to replace my permissions on documents, or I only want to replace my users on folders, for example. So much more targeted in the nature about what we can change. A couple of minor improvements, largely around performance and standardizing some of our settings, standardizing our approach to deploying the sample reports that we package with Permissions Manager, and also just some consistency changes with presentations of roles and groups. So largely that last one's cosmetic, but again, we're about some consistency and keeping pace, of course, with the open text releases. 22.1 out late last year, early this, and we're in February, and we're pretty much straight on the back of the availability of the open text solution.
Hey, quick question. How does an end user go about, getting the upgrade from us? Can you remind us?
Yeah, it's simple, Brian. Raise a ticket with support@fastman.com, simple email to that address, and we'll handle it from there. We'll issue new license keys and any updates required to your entitlement.
Very good. And like you said, Permissions Manager is release 22.1, and it aligns with the latest OpenText release too, apparently.
Not just that release, Brian, we're backward compatible with a number of the older versions of Content Suite. So this release would effectively be also supported as far back as 16.2.8. So yes, we're keeping pace with the open text quarterly release cycles, but we're compatible across a wide variety of the release and install base that we see amongst our customers.
Very good. Very good. Well done. All right, let's move along here. Hey, would you like to take us through some of these new features? Maybe do a little more of a deep dive on those popular features?
Yeah, so we touched on these in the summary before. What we're seeing here is a search result through our permission search module, as you were talking about earlier, Brian. We've got a search here in the top, which is the historical presentation of all of the access rights. So we can see our search results listed line by line, and then all of the access rights that are granted on those objects. And the screen below is now the simplified model, where we're showing the only the ACL entries that matched our search criteria. For those with a keen eye, you'll see a link a little bit further up above the summary that allows you to toggle between the two views.
Okay, let's move along. How about this one?
So no screenshot here, I'm afraid, but essentially for those who are familiar with our effective permissions presentation, where we enable you to enter a user or a group and look at the effective permissions that user or group has on content. That view is now available on the item that we initiated Permissions Manager from. So rather than just presenting on the content of a folder, we present on both the folder and the sub-content. And again, with that toggle, Brian, consistent with the search, the ability to actually hide or present that view based upon need.
All right, moved along, Dave, too. How about this one here?
Replace user. So as we mentioned, now have the ability to include the different object types when we're replacing a user or group through or role for that matter, through the replace user group function. So I can now be very specific about the type of content that I wish to target as part of a replacement. Great, for example, when you're transferring ownership of content from an RM perspective, and you may wish to only update the documents in the hierarchy and leave the folder structure, for example, in the ownership on those folders as is.
Very good. Very good. I think that wraps it up too, right? So thank you so much for presenting your new release, David. Congratulations again for a fantastic job. I'd like to just remind the community out there that Fastman does offer permissions training, specifically on Permissions Manager, but it does a deep dive into how to configure best practices on configuring permissions and access within the Content Suite system. It's a nice class refresher. Reach out to us at any time. I'm Brian Lapointe. I'm happy to help you with this or anything to do with your deployment of Permissions Manager. So again, thank you, David, for your time today, and everyone out there for watching this video. We'll see you out there. Thank you so much. Bye for now.